good old wrestling. Before World Wrestling Entertainment or the WWE, there were two major federations, the WWF or World Wrestling Federation and the WCW, World Championship Wrestling. These two monsters dominated the late 80s and all through the 90s. Wrestlers would float back and forth between the two companies. If your favorite wrestler went missing from one, you could expect them to show up on the other soon. Both companies were known for their monthly pay-per-view events, perhaps none bigger than WWF's WrestleMania. WrestleMania 35 was just last month, but here we're going to look at all of the licensed professional wrestling games on the NES. There were 3 WWF WrestleMania games, one WWF King of the Ring, another pay-per-view event, and simply WCW, World Championship Wrestling, the lone entry from that company. Let's take a look.
With acclaimed WrestleMania for the Nintendo Entertainment System. A leg drop, an elbow smash, a body slam!
WWF WrestleMania from Acclaim!
Ooh, yeah, I want a rematch.
'89's WrestleMania was the first professionally endorsed wrestling game on the NES, and it was... Oh, it was a good start, I guess you could say. There are 6 wrestlers to choose from. The Million Dollar Man, Ted DiBiase, Bam Bam Bigelow, Honky Tonk Man, Macho Man Randy Savage, Andre the Giant, and the cover star, Hulk Hogan. You can select from 2 main modes. One is Standard, which is essentially an exhibition mode. You select a wrestler and an opponent to wrestle against. The other is a tournament mode, where you select a wrestler to compete against the other 5 wrestlers in a single elimination format. If you lose, you have to start over. You can play with up to 6 people across 2 controllers, which is pretty neat for 1989 Nintendo. Each match is timed at 3 minutes, so if you don't pin your opponent by then, it's considered a draw, and in the tournament mode, you'll have to wrestle them again. Otherwise, you get their energy bar all the way down and pin them to win. Each wrestler has their own movesets and special abilities, but it's fairly limited. You can punch, kick, headbutt, and body slam. There are some weird restrictions though, like you can only body slam an opponent if you have more health than they do, and not all wrestlers can perform a body slam. You can run and bounce off the ropes to do running kicks, and you can climb onto the turnbuckles at the bottom to do high-flying kicks. The big guys like Andre the Giant and Bam Bam can't climb the turnbuckle though, so I guess that's a nice realistic consideration. There are other power-ups you can get during the matches. Each wrestler has an icon assigned to them, and if you see this icon float across the top of the ring, you can get to it and get a health boost. This only happens in tournament mode, and it's more annoying than it's worth. The icons are hard to catch and don't really give you much health. Also, if your wrestler turns red after enduring a big beatdown, you can inflict more damage on the opponent, but it doesn't last very long. The game is rife with aggravations. You can actually lose health from performing moves. Sometimes the wrestlers just run away from you and you spend most of your time chasing them around. Come back here, dude, just let me kick you. Hey, where are you going? You have to be specifically on their plane to make contact with them, and it's very picky about that. You can get trapped by an opponent and beaten down. Just let me run away. Sometimes when you want to initiate a pin, you can't. Watch this. I have his health all the way down, and I want a pin. It's just down and B to pin. I've done it 30 times already, but here for some reason, I can't do it. Then he gets up, knocks me down, and pins me instead. Ugh. Oh, and the button combination to pin is different for a couple of wrestlers, so despite only having 2 action buttons on the controller, having the manual handy is a must for beginners. The single-player tournament has quite a difficulty uptick as well. Unless you are Ted DiBiase, you'll face him first, and he's easy, again, if you can catch him. Then the next match is Bam Bam or Honky Tonk, depending on who you are, but now the opponent is all over you. They do more damage, they're faster, and harder to take down. If you manage to beat them, it gets even more aggravating going forward, so good luck, it takes some patience. If you play with 2 or more players, each wrestler wrestles the other in a round-robin format, and the wrestler with the best record wins. The multiplayer aspect of the game is its strong suit, as the computer AI fluctuates between being completely clueless and frustratingly cheesy. The music for each wrestler is here and alternate on repeat throughout the matches in little 30-second segments. That's a fun touch, and they were all composed by Rare's legendary David Wise, so this game has that going for it. All in all, it's not particularly fun for a single-player experience, but you can find joy in it if you bring a friend along for the ride. Well, challenge might be an overstatement. In this WrestleMania entry, you can no longer play a 6-player tournament, as the modes are now a single-player campaign, a 2-player co-op tag team match, or 2 players versus the computer tag tournament. There are more wrestlers to choose from. Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, and Andre the Giant all return and are joined by Ultimate Warrior, Big Boss Man, Ravishing Rick Rude, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and you. Yeah, you're in the game as a generic wrestler wearing brown boots and brown spandex underwear, just the way you would have wanted. Missing from the game is the ability to run and bounce off the ropes and perform those types of moves, but overall the game is much easier. The wrestlers move around the screen quickly, but if you preempt your attacks by simply button mashing your next move, you'll likely get the upper hand. In fact, if you really want to breeze through every match, just repeatedly press A beside the opponents, body slam them, go over to them and press B to do a leg drop on them, let them get up, and repeat. And that's why I think WrestleMania Challenge might be an overstatement, as there's really no challenge here. After about 10 minutes of getting used to the controls, you probably won't lose another match. In the single-player tournament mode, you wrestle in 8 matches against the other computer wrestlers. If you select tag team, you get to choose your 2 wrestlers to go up against the computer selection. There's only 1 match to win here, so it's not a tag tournament. Similarly, with the Survivor Series option, you select 3 wrestlers to go against the computer's 3. You must eliminate each of the other's wrestlers by pin to win. If you and a friend team up, you can play a tag team tournament, so that's neat. You can actually exit the ring in this game, though it's tough to master and the countdown is so fast you can't stay out there long. The quickest way to leave the ring is to have Ultimate Warrior throw you out. When I was the Ultimate Warrior, I kept throwing opponents out of the ring when I didn't really even want to. Your energy is displayed at the bottom of the ring on the side of the apron. This is cool and all, but sometimes the screen scrolls over too far and you can't see what your or your opponent's energy level is. And because the game is isometric, maneuvering takes some getting used to. Left goes up and left, down goes down, and right or something, maybe. It's wild. Just like the last game, the wrestlers run away from you constantly. Get over here, dude. And they hardly stay down long enough to make a leap from the corner post worth a try, though I did manage it once. David Wise is back on the soundtrack though, so that's awesome. All of the wrestlers' individual tracks are here and sound pretty good. All of the moves are pretty easy to perform, though you'll find the risk reward for most of them aren't as worth it as just repeatedly body slamming the other guy. It's still handy to have the manual on hand when you start out though. All in all, it's much better than the first WrestleMania. More wrestlers, brighter colors, faster paced, less aggravating, less positioning pickiness, an animated audience, a tag team mode, and no weird difficulty spikes. But still, as a solo experience, it's just too simple to be enjoyed for too long. If you want a lot of enjoyment out of it, again, bring a friend along for the ride. There's plenty of fun to be had with the tag team modes. On a sad note, as of the making of this video, Hulk Hogan is the only cover superstar still alive today. Maybe adding some metal will take these games up a notch. In Steel Cage Challenge, the biggest addition is obviously a steel cage match, but really the game is nothing more special than the previous entry. The game is not developed by Rare this time around, instead Sculptured Software had its turn with it. The art style is noticeably different, but altogether not bad. There's a distinct lack of detail to the character faces, but their outfits make them stand apart. You can now grapple your opponents, and that's the key this time around. Sure, you can still punch and kick, but by simply facing your opponent and touching them, you initiate a grapple. If you're being overpowered, tap A until you aren't. Then you can do a few moves, like a body slam, a toss, a headbutt, or you can swing your opponent into the ropes, which is tricky to master. You can run and bounce off the ropes on your own by pressing A and B together while moving in a direction and perform either a lunge or a kick. You can jump off the top corner post and onto your opponent, and stomp or leg drop them while they're down, and that's the extent of the moves. There are no special moves for each wrestler or anything like that, so it's fairly limited. You can play single player versus the computer, or you can either face off against another player or play a co-op tag team match or tournament. In the single player mode, you can do a one-off match or tag team match versus the computer, or you can wrestle a campaign for the championship, both single player and tag team. You can select the difficulty as either easy, medium, or hard, as well as whether you want to wrestle a regular match or a cage match. If you select to wrestle for the title, you wrestle on the game's difficulty and you'll wrestle in a cage match every few matches. The biggest difference I noticed in the difficulty levels are that wrestlers typically get a second win mid-match on normal, but not on easy. Opponents are slightly more aggressive on the harder difficulties, but nothing too crazy. The only thing special about the cage match is that you have to get your opponent's energy all the way down and then walk over to the cage and climb it. If your opponent stands up while you're climbing, you'll fall back down on the mat. The manual says to press up repeatedly to climb the cage, but but that's a lie. You just hold up to climb, otherwise you'll do like I did and look like an idiot for a few minutes before you figure that out. There are some new wrestlers here to choose from. Hulk Hogan is of course back, but you also get Rowdy Roddy Piper, Sid Justice, $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, The Mountie, The Undertaker, Bret the Hitman Hart, Irvin R. Shyster, the IRS Man, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Macho Man Randy Savage. Ooh, yeah! All the wrestlers' entrance music is here again, but this time David Wise wasn't a part of it. The tracks sound really good though and are recognizable for each wrestler. All said, this one is really no more fun than WrestleMania Challenge. It's only worth playing for the new wrestlers in it, as the steel cage match adds nothing valuable to the experience. King of the Ring is the last WWF game released on the NES. The sprites are bigger and the wrestling roster has changed a little once again. You can't have a WWF game without Hulk Hogan or Macho Man, as we know by now. The others here include Mr. Perfect, Bret the Hitman Hart, the Heartbreaker Shawn Michaels, Yokozuna, the Narcissist Lex Luger, Razor Ramon, Bam Bam Bigelow, The Undertaker, and once again, you return! Here you get to change your stats a little, though it's limited. You can input a name, but you can't change your color palette or anything like that. There's of course single player and two player modes. The two player modes are just versus or tag matches, no special modes, no tournaments. In single player you can wrestle a single exhibition, tag exhibition, a campaign through all the wrestlers, or a tournament style King of the Ring. None are particularly special. In tag team mode, it notably takes a while for your players to tag each other. You're supposed to press select when you're near the ropes, and you have to wait for your partner to waltz over and enter the ring. What's taking so long, man? When wrestling, you can punch and kick. You can run and bounce off the ropes and perform flying kicks or leg drops, and once again, grappling returns. If you overpower your opponent during a grapple, you can slam them, throw them into the ropes, or slap them. Basically the same as Steel Cage Challenge. It's much easier to pin opponents here. You just press over on the D-pad and A. Sometimes you'll initiate a pin when you really meant to walk over and elbow drop them, which are basically the same button combinations. You can exit and re-enter the ring easily, and the countdown is slow, so you can have a little fun out there if you want. You can jump off the top turnbuckle, all that stuff. Difficulty selection is back again, which is nice. Easy mode is almost too easy. Medium is about right, and I did notice that on harder modes the opponents sometimes just beat you to a pulp and never get around to pinning you. Just pin me already, Bam Bam, I'm done. The game looks alright, the colors are bright, the crowd is doing crowd stuff, and the music is all here. But there are no special moves for each wrestler, and the moves you can do are basically the same as Steel Cage Challenge. The game actually makes the Steel Cage mode seem interesting now, as King of the Ring only adds a tournament mode, which does nothing to affect the actual wrestling part. There's the tournament mode where you wrestle all of the other wrestlers, and King of the Ring where you wrestle some of the other wrestlers. The subtle improvements in movement and animation don't really make this a significant upgrade over its predecessor. Hold on a sec. Bam Bam, what are you doing? Are you racing me? Anyway, King of the Ring is great if you wanted to wrestle as Lex Luger or Yokozuna, but not great if you expected anything much better than the previous games. One nice touch here is that One nice touch here is that the wrestlers are introduced at the beginning, and you notice Lex Luger becomes the only wrestler to be in both a WWF and WCW game on the NES. The game released in 1990, the same year as the second WWF game, WrestleMania Challenge, and has 13 wrestlers on it, more than any of the WWF games. You can wrestle as the Nature Boy, woo, Ric Flair, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Dogface Gremlin Rick Steiner, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, Michael P.S. Hayes, Mike Rotunda, Sting, Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, the Total Package Lex Luger, Steve Williams, and Kevin Sullivan. The first thing you'll notice in the ring is that there is no health bar, yet according to the manual, certain moves can only be performed if your energy level is higher than your opponent's. So that's frustrating to say the least, but it's something you don't need to worry about if you're a first-time player, because this game will just flat out kick your ass. I never won a single match. There's no difficulty settings, the game is just tough. The opponent's modus operandi is to walk up and kick you repeatedly, get you bent over, and then have their way with you in the way of suplexes, body slams, and tossing you completely out of the ring. When you get tossed out, sometimes the game throws a wrench into the mix. literally. And I suppose you could pick up the wrench if you weren't on your back dying, but the opponent usually does and clubs you with it. If you manage to pull off a move, there's a power bar that pops up showing the amount of force applied to the move. If you're having this done to you, you can't do anything about it, but if you pull off the move, it happens so rare it might surprise you that you even pulled off a move, and then you'll forget to ramp the meter up, resulting in a weak attack. You can even choose your special attacks before each match and map them to buttons, which is so cool. But good luck pulling them off. You're supposed to be in the middle of the ring, have more energy than your opponent, but how do I know, and press A and B together to pull off the special move, but without knowing their level and getting absolutely railroaded by your opponent, you probably won't pull it off. If you manage to get good at the game and beat every wrestler, you unlock a special wrestler, the WCW Master. He's apparently over 7 feet tall, and it would probably help if you could beat him out of the gate. If you beat, I guess, any opponent, you get a password to return to that match, I guess. I see where you can enter a password, but I was never able to do it because I never received one because I never won a match. I'm not going to say the game is impossible. There's probably more than a few of you out there who can take this game to task, no problem. But it's so brutal for a beginner. It's tough to really want to stick around and sink your teeth into, especially since the WWF games look better and they're a little better about giving you feedback for your inputs and actually feeling possible to play. All in all, you're better off choosing one of the WWF games. King of the Ring is probably the best, but still Cage Challenge isn't too far behind it, followed by WrestleMania Challenge, the first WrestleMania, and then WCW Wrestling. Honestly, all of these games are enhanced when playing with a friend. The tag team campaigns offer plenty of co-op fun, and versus modes at least negate the game's own difficulty levels, which you may need to enjoy some of these. Honestly, to enjoy some old school wrestling games, you may want to look outside the NES into some of the 16-bit games like WWF Royal Rumble, WWF Raw, and plenty of others. And before I go, in March of this year, 2019, a previously unreleased wrestling game that was mostly finished was uncovered. The game is simply titled UWC and features wrestlers on it from the WCW, like Ric Flair. As of this video, the game ROM has not been made publicly available, but it's always neat to learn about games that never were, but are. Alright, that does it for professionally endorsed wrestling games on the NES. Ooh yeah, and thanks for watching, brother.